If you ever get the opportunity to design a user interface or to lay out something on a document for other people to follow, please pay close attention. You will avoid so many problems if you do this one simple thing. Hi, I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips. So platforms like SharePoint, spreadsheets like Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets, I don't understand why these become creative exercises by individuals who think they need to do fancy or show off their abilities. When you're creating a document for the use of other people, maybe it's a tracking sheet, for example, maybe it's an intake form, you want to conform to the most basic and standardized ways of doing things. Like, for example, tabs should take you between fields. Okay? When you're writing a sales letter, it's great to have different fonts, but your headline font will be larger than your body font. You want the usability of your creative work to be very high. So focus your creativity on the ideas and concepts of the copy and leave creativity behind when it comes to layout. If something is difficult to read, maybe you've decided to use different fonts. So your headline font is instead of a black, it's on the website, so you can have a red or a blue or something else. But ultimately, a blue is very often thought to be a link. So if a large percentage of your people thinks the headline being blue would be a link, then you're going to distract them from focusing on the copy itself. If you have a drop case that drops down like 10 rows instead of 1 or 2 rows, those things distract. So again, when you're designing something, a website layout, a landing page, a sales letter, you want to follow very simple, almost meme-like layouts so that they are understood by the majority of individuals who read or interact with that thing. In fact, you want them to move towards the end result rather than interacting with your platform. So a form, if you're going to use a multi-step survey to survey customers, you want to go ahead and don't design a package yourself. Don't do a PHP form. Don't do anything other than just grab a tool that's readily available, that has high usability, and remove everything else from the page except for the survey so that the individual can focus on giving you the details that they need with the least number of distractions so that they can actually complete the form. See, it's possible that your fancy opt-in form with the graphics in the background and the different font and, it's so exciting and creative is getting a low conversion rate because nobody can figure out the damn thing's a form. So I personally opt for old school direct response looking pages. So if it's going to be an advertorial, I'm going to have 3 columns. I'm going to have 2 columns. I'm going to look at the rest of the publication and I'm going to get as close as possible to the rest of the publication so that my visitor, when they find that page, they get that PDF file, they get a letter in the mail, it is easily recognizable as something they should read. I know you want to be clever. You want to put an envelope inside of an envelope, and in the inside envelope it has a funny opening, but if they can't just tear the top off of it and pull the letter out, they may get frustrated. Now, of course, you can have them tear the top off and pull the letter out, and then it tells them that inside the envelope, there's another envelope that has a secret message that they shouldn't read until after they've read this main message, because what they'll find is so exciting that it will just completely transform their business. You can build up excitement, but you've got to literally explain and tell people exactly what to do. So if it's not completely brainless, and by the way, it doesn't need to be brainless to you. It needs to be brainless to your audience. Your audience needs to be able to pick it up and read it. That's why ebooks are so weird. People will download ebooks that have to be loaded into an ebook reader before the reader can even get into it. Why not just give them a PDF file? And even another way of listening and thinking about it is if a lot of people download PDFs. I've got terabytes of PDF files that I use for research, but many of them I've never read the file. I downloaded it because it was a credible source, and then I scanned through the file with a search tool to find the information I'm looking for, and then I read the paragraph around it. You don't want them to be doing that if you've created a special report that sells them something. You want to sit them down and tell them to go from beginning to end. Now, what kind of material do people go beginning to end through? Well, they go that way through books and print materials. Online, they're very often going to search. They're going to scroll down to the end real quick. Their mind isn't set in the watch beginning to end. Now, video sales letters. A video sales letter, if you're going to YouTube, people will watch a video and then they'll jump out of the video, they'll bounce from it, they'll jump back and forth with chapter headings and things. And if you've got a video that's going to sell something, you've got to set up the sale. So you want to do more of a platform presentation where you're taking the listener through a story, which again mirrors something that they're going to watch beginning to end, which would be a movie. And you really want them to watch beginning to end because you need them to have the key selling points. Now, you will have some people that will jump to the end and buy. That's fine. But again, you want to have them walk through the key selling points, the reasons why, and you want to make sure it's done in a way that they can understand it. Now, constantly I see websites that are difficult to navigate. I see SharePoint sites that are meant to gather or support information that are difficult to use. I've seen little gimmicks, style sheet things that change the cursor. You want to go basic. You want to go easy, simple. Remove everything from the page that doesn't support the key objective of that document. You want to go through and make sure that when a visitor gets to a PDF, for example, that PDF opens up on the beginning, at the beginning. And then if you have any cross references in there or you have a table of contents, you want to use those not only to credentialize your work, but also so that the visitor can navigate the work and so that they can get through and read it. Now, I do a lot of stuff in physical print. I do it in physical print because the concepts that I'm covering are a bit more dense than what you would normally get. So I'm writing for mid-level and executive level individuals. They have a lot of the context necessary to set up what we're looking for. And if I bored them with the basics, they would stop. They'd drop out. But again, if they don't have the basics, then they won't understand the other material. So I've got to inlay those basics and stories and demonstration and describe them in the benefits that they get out of it, just so they'll pay attention to the basics. All of it has to be written in a 5th grade reading level. So even though these individuals can read college level materials, it's written in a 5th grade reading level so that they can go through it quickly. What you write for the web is going to have to be in a lower reading level than what you write in print. So maybe you have a 5th grade reading level lead generation article. Maybe it's 1,500 words. It's kind of like a feature article. And at the end, it jumps them into getting a copy of the free book. They get a copy of the free book. The book physically comes to them. And then it's in a little bit more language that they would recognize as being authoritative. Maybe a 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade reading level. And you might even have elements that are at a 12th grade reading level that are demonstrations of how difficult it can be to do certain things. And that's why your method is faster or simpler or easier to follow. Again, when you're designing the layout or the interface or the input mechanisms, you want things to be simple. And there will be times where you'll look at it and you'll be like, oh my gosh, it looks like this looks like the website's from the 90s. I want to see some animation. No, you do not want distractions on the page. You want your visitor to be able to do exactly what the visitor wants to accomplish as quickly as possible and as smooth as possible. So I worked for Lillian Vernon for a while, and Lillian Vernon is a catalog company, a digital marketer. Now, this was back in the 90s, and I worked on the IT side. When we sat down to talk about how different types of things would get presented to the visitor, it was almost like, what's the bare bones? You know, these wire diagrams? It was like they didn't want to go anywhere past the wire diagram, not because their visitors were stupid or something, not because their visitors might make mistakes, but because they wanted to remove every obstacle possible from that visitor to go from a prospect to a buyer. Why wouldn't you want the same thing? Focus your creativity on the concepts, on the selling points, on the benefits. Don't put it into how you graphically present something. And there's even an argument that you may want to present your materials in a candid and transparent way as possible, so not overproduced. So a lot of times I have used handwritten special reports. So the special report from 20-some pages is literally handwritten. Now you might be saying, well, Justin, that would be difficult to read. And you're right, it is difficult to read, but it was accompanied by an audio discussion. So the concept of the article was this topic was so critical and important that I wrote to you. I sat down and wrote it. So the story of why it was created and why it was so important. And I explained that story in the audio that comes in before and after the individual opts in for the report. Okay, so I introduce the report, why the report's so important, why they need to get the report and what the benefits are for them getting the report. Then when they get the report, I explain why is the report handwritten, why I haven't taken the time to type it up. Well, because this is critical information and I want to make sure you get it right now. And by the way, in this report, you'll discover this, this, and this. On page 15, I cover this concept, and here's why that concept's important. And I literally walk them through the handwritten report. And then because the report's designed to get a paid consultation, is that I offer them at the end, hey, look, you can write and send in your questions anytime. Or you can get a paid consultation, go to the top of the list, and we'll sit down and discuss your specific challenge. I think that report's called Recycle Your Marketing. And it worked pretty well. Now that I've had more time, I have excerpted from that report and written materials that were typed up. I have done additional podcasts around those materials, but I got the report done with a sense of urgency. It allowed me to draw out my diagrams very quickly. I didn't have to fight with PowerPoint or anything. The user got it in a consumable format. So they got it in a PDF file. And the PDF file, I actually ran it through a OCR scanner, which is basically I trained it for my handwriting. And so it actually had searchable text in it. So even though, and Adobe lets you do this, so even though it was in my handwriting, there was searchable text in there. And then I did actively answer questions where people didn't understand what was the word on page 5. Okay, the word on page 5 is this, and here's why it's important, and then gave a little more context and detail. So there were times I did type out individual pages. But as part of my editorial process, it allowed me to get the piece of material in front of the prospect faster. It also was mentally congruent with something that was fast, something that was in demand, something that they needed to know now. Now, frankly, some of the people who opted in 3 months after I wrote the report didn't realize that I wrote the report 3 months earlier because I didn't include a bunch of dates and the references were pretty evergreen, but it reinforced that sense of urgency. So when I say simple, I don't mean primitive, but I also don't mean that it has to be super clean and typed. You don't want it to look sterile. There are folks that advocate copy doodles or different types of copy embellishments, as if you sat down and read the document and you hand underline things, or you used a highlighter to highlight things as if you were reading it to put the final approval on the particular document. I do a lot of manuscripts. I've had clients do this as well. They'll have a pre-release manuscript, which will actually be a report. It might describe a process or a methodology of doing things. It might even lay out an action plan, but it's literally courier type double space, like an actual manuscript that you would send to a book publisher. So what is that doing? Well, it's implying that this is so valuable and important that it's actually going to become a real bookstore book. And however, I'm getting it to you now, so you don't have to wait till everybody else gets it. So you're getting something ahead of the crowd. See, this is what I mean about how you present something. It's got to be easy to use. It's got to be easy to follow. If you've got a graph that supports one of the key ideas of your report, the graph provides eye relief. It gives the visitor something interesting to look at. The reader has now something interesting to look at. But if they actually look at it and they don't understand a damn thing it says, then you have failed. So let me just summarize. First off, easy to read. Second, easy to interact with. Third, remove everything that doesn't move forward the outcome that you desire, the outcome that the reader desires. 5, I think we're on, I don't know what number we're on, but basically support the outcome. And then the last point is be congruent with your message. Like my podcast, for example, I don't go through and edit the podcasts. I give it to you straight through. I have a little outline that I work from. I have an experience or an activity I work from. I deliver it to you. But the reason I deliver it to you without editing is that this topic is so important that you need it now rather than later. And then I offer you a way that if you do have questions, if something was unclear, that you can raise your hand and visit me at www.adbriefing.co.uk, go to the contact page, and then write me with your question. See, I don't need you to type up something super nice. I need you just to write with your question, share a little background, and send it in, because we're going to build a personal connection. where you're going to reach out. I'm going to answer your specific question. It gives me an opportunity to improve my future materials. It also gives me an opportunity to come back to the original recording and then comment on it. But what I'm not saying here is that you just slam stuff out there. It has to be well thought out. It has to have a framework, and then it has to be congruent with what your listener expects. So you're framing it to the listener, but you're also building it in such a way. We could talk about the formulas later, but I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips. It is my major pet peeve to interact with a website or interact with some sort of tool that is just completely difficult to use, frustrating, and that might be why your conversion rates are so low. That might be why your opt-in rates are so low. Again, thanks for listening. I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips, helping copywriters, business development professionals, and marketers grow their book of business and increase their value in the marketplace. Thanks for listening.